Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Beginner's Yoga for Athletes here on Long Game Yoga. I am Ken. This episode, we're going to look at some of the basic component pieces that will build up to the ability to do a Sun Salutation, Surya Namaskar A. This is something that you see in tons of flows, right? You go into most yoga studios that do vinyasa flow, you will see this. And this is actually what's called a Sun Salutation you'll often hear called a vinyasa, like take a vinyasa. This is a good place for a vinyasa. And vinyasa is a Sanskrit word. It means to place in a certain fashion or precise fashion. So it's a real core piece of a lot of our flows. It's certainly the flows that I have on the channel. You'll almost always find at least one in one of my flows. So I'm going to break down the pieces, show you some modifications for it, and then we'll do a short flow involving it. Now, if you've watched episode 1, which I know you have, I hope you have, you'll see some of the other pieces that we covered in that first episode here. So that's how I'm going to do it. As we move through the series, we're going to keep building on what we've learned and incorporate those in the flows as we move. So let's get started in our child's pose, which we looked at in episode 1. So let's just come down to the mat. And as we did before, we want to just bring the sides of the big toes together, separate the knees a little bit, and then just bring the forehead down to the mat. You can have your hands down by your side. This probably feels familiar because we did it in that first episode. And then what we want to do from here is reach our arms forward. And the reason I'm doing this transition this way is because this will teach you the right spacing for your downward facing dog. This should feel pretty natural. So from your child's pose, reach your arms in front of you, straighten the arms, and then just lift the hips, tuck the toes, send the hips up and back, finding our way to our downward facing dog. So we're pushing the hips up and back, straightening into the spine, straightening into the legs. We want the arms and the legs doing roughly the same amount of work. And so what we're going to do from here is we're going to look up and we're going to walk our feet to our hands. And then straighten into the legs. And so we're going to look at this position here. This is going to be part of what we do in our Sun Salutations. So straighten in the legs, and then we're just going to lift the torso. We're just coming up to standing, right? So this is Tadasana, right? Standing mountain pose. We were doing this on our back in the first episode when we were lying on the mat. So when you're lying down and you have your feet activated, that's reclined mountain pose. This is standing mountain pose. And the feet should be about hips width apart, right underneath the hips, boom. Typically you're going to point the palms forward when you're just standing in Tadasana. And what we're really looking for is like a plumb line. Think about that. So from the crown of the head down, shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, heels, down into the mat. So you can rock back and forth a little, kind of find that plumb line, find that center, and then just relax. And then think about a little cord right on the crown of your head just lifting you up. So we do want to have a little bit of sense of extension here, so we're not, just kind of hanging out. Everything is engaged, the core is turned on, the legs are turned on. We're standing up nice and straight. So this is standing mountain pose. From the side, it just looks like a person standing in mountain pose. So from here, what I want you to do is I want you to hinge at the hip. So when we fold over, when we're doing this, we want to hinge at the hip. So you could even bring your hands right to your hip, feel that extension, and then let the head hang nice and heavy. This is our forward fold. So here, again, the feet are hips width. You could always bring the sides of the big toes together. Some people like that, but just be comfortable. Let the head hang nice and heavy here. So what we're looking for is this extension of the spine. The weight of the head is actually going to be tractioning out the neck a little bit. The spine can get a little longer in the opposite direction that gravity is usually hitting it. And then again, think about where that center of gravity is sitting. You don't want to be so much back in your heels. You want to bring more weight to the front of your feet. You'll actually even see your toes engage a little bit. So this is our forward fold. And now what I want you to do is lift the torso so that it's parallel to the floor. And you can bring your hands to your shins here. So ideally, what we're looking for is like a right angle. So we've got a 90-degree bend at the hips. We've still got that hinge. And here we want the back flat, right? I mean, the spine itself has some curves, but think of the back being nice and flat. So you're pulling the heart forward. You're pulling that crown of the head forward a little bit, keeping that weight in the front of your feet. This is our halfway lift. So there are Sanskrit names here. I won't really dwell on them. You can look them up if you want. The forward fold is Uttasana. The halfway lift is Ardha Uttanasana. So forward fold, everything is hanging down. Halfway lift, the back is nice and straight. And then you can lift back up to Tadasana, right? So those are three of the pieces that are going to be part of Sun Salutation. Tadasana, forward fold, halfway lift. Okay? So that's pretty straightforward so far. So what I want to show you now is our plank, which is going to be part of the Sun Salutation as well. So let's go back to our down dog. And what we want to do from our down dog is move into what's called plank pose. Now there's two ways to do this. You can do it from your knees. So from down dog, just drop your knees and then come forward. So you're straightening the hip, right? So you're not sticking your butt up. But from your knees to the crown of your head is a nice straight line, and you can just have the tops of the feet resting on the mat. So this is a plank, a version of it. The other version of plank, instead of being on the knees, you're on your the balls of your feet, rather. So to make that shift from a down dog to a plank, you're just rocking forward. And let me talk a little bit about what we want to see when we're in either version of plank. So we want the wrists right underneath the shoulders. And if you're in this full plank, you want to be pushing back through your heels, pulling the quad muscles, your leg muscles to the bone. And we don't want to let the hips sink down. We don't want them hiking up. We want that Tadasana shape, the same shape as when we were on our back or standing. So from the heels through the crown of the head, we're nice and long. And even if you have your knees on the mat, same thing, from the knees to the crown of the head, get nice and long. The hands, the wrists are right under the shoulders. I'm not letting things sink or pike, trying to keep things nice and straight. So that's plank. And then the next component here I want to show you is low cobra. So what we want to do with low cobra is we want to be on our belly on the mat. So you can just lower yourself down to the mat. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring our hands by the low ribs. So the bottom of my palm, you know, this area right here is going to line up with the lowest rib on my rib cage. So it's hard to see here, but you know, really you're going to end up with your elbows above your wrists. And my thumbs are really tucked in, like they're actually touching the rib cage here. So we start with the forehead or the chin on the mat. But then to move into the low cobra, we're going to start with our feet. So press the tops of your feet, that sneaker area, if you're wearing sneakers, into the mat, and then lift the kneecaps. See how the kneecaps are lifting? I'm pressing the belly down into the mat, the hips, but I'm also pulling my belly button up to the spine, so I'm engaging the core. And then on an inhale, you lift the head, the neck, and the chest up off of the mat. So I didn't let my knees drop. The legs are still working here. And then I want to roll my shoulders back and pin the elbows toward one another. Now I'm looking a little bit ahead of the mat here. And I'm picturing pulling my heart forward. So we're broadening across the collarbones, pulling the shoulder blades toward one another, pulling the elbows toward one another, engaging those back muscles. So those muscles all along the back are doing a ton of work here. So much so that you can even hover your hands up off the mat and keep the shape. And then to come out of that, you just lower your forehead and your chest down to the mat. And so a couple things to think about when you're in that low cobra. You want to picture your inner thighs spinning up to the ceiling. That's going to help to broaden across the low back, which is something we want. We don't want, as we lift up, we don't want to be crushing into that low back area anywhere. So if you've got any low back stuff going on, just be careful, of course. And if you've got low back stuff going on, I'm sure you're already careful. The other thing we want to think about in that low cobra is that sense of grounding. So we're really pressing this part of the body down into the mat as we're lifting everything up. And as we're lifting everything up, again, we're opening, broadening across the collarbones, pulling the shoulder blades toward one another. And then the muscles along the spine are what's lifting the torso up here. So along our spine, we've got these 3 layers of muscles, and we're engaging them all as we're lifting up like that. So it's really good for us, which is one of the reasons that we're going to find low cobra in so many of our flows. And the other thing I want to mention, and I'll talk about this a little more when we start to look at a sun salutation specifically, but as we lift into that back bend, so this is a belly down back bend, our low cobra. As we lift into it, we want to inhale. So lift on the inhale and then exhale as you lower down. This is another way that the breath is a real strong part of our practice. So we want to keep that in mind as we do that. So let me talk about another way that we're going to think about that plank and low cobra, right? Because as we're going to flow through it, we're going to make this transition where we're going to start in a down dog. We're going to roll forward to a plank. I'll show the knees down version. We're going to be in that plank. We're going to lower down all the way to the floor with my elbows just grazing the ribs on the way down. And then my hands are basically in the right spot for low cobra. Engage the feet, lift the kneecaps, inhale into this back bend. And then exhale. We bring the forehead down, and then we're going to push up through plank, keeping the elbows pinned in as you push. And then we can come back to a down dog or come back to a child's pose or whatever is going to work for us on that. So that is the beginning of our vinyasa. That's one flavor. So if we want to, we could just stick with that and flow cleanly through it. There's another variation of the vinyasa, and I want to just break out part of that before we start to flow through the whole thing. So there's always a back bend in our sun salutation. And so the back bend is either going to be that low cobra that we just looked at, or it can be an upward facing dog. That is also a back bend, and it's a back bend that gets a little more into the shoulders and the arms than that low cobra does. Now, to be clear, both of them work the muscles along the back. They're both really good at that. So it's not like one is better or more advanced than the other. They just work a slightly different set of muscles, with that up dog working the shoulder muscles a little bit more. So let me show you what up dog looks like. And then I'm also going to show you the transition we use to get into up dog. So if this is sounding complicated, it gets a lot simpler when you see the whole thing put together. And it gets even simpler when you do the whole thing together. So let's come back to the mat. So this is the shape we were in, our belly is down on the mat. So again, low cobra was this. We were just anchoring our legs, engaging the lower half of the body as we peel the head, neck, and chest away from the mat. So this is one version. This is low cobra. But upward facing dog, we start here and we just press into the hands and lift the body up. Now, crucially, my knees are not going to be on the mat for upward facing dog. The only things that are going to be on the mat are the tops of my feet and my palms. I'm pulling my chest through my arms, stacking the shoulders right over the wrists, engaging the legs. So I'm not letting the pelvis sink down too far. I don't want to strain the low back. I'm engaging my core, engaging the legs. And then if you want to move to down dog, you just roll up and over the toes or hop over the toes and push back to your downward facing dog there. So again, with upward facing dog, we're getting more into these muscles here, and it's a more intense version because more of the body is lifted off of the mat. But that's the thing, and the big mistake that I see people make in classes is they'll come up into their upward facing dog with their knees still on the mat. And it's not giving you as much work. It's not giving you as much benefit. And I think it also probably would cause a little more strain in the low back. So we don't really want to do it that way. So you might be asking, how do we get into our upward facing dog? So we could do it from that low cobra, the way we did it, or we're going to involve that last piece of our vinyasas, which is a slightly, I'm going to come down on my knees for this one. It's a slightly more advanced pose, so it's a little more challenging, and you may need to build up to it a bit. If you can do push-ups, you can do Chaturanga, because it's essentially doing a push-up. It's like a yoga push-up. And so what it looks like is we're going to start in a plank, right? Same plank that we were looking at earlier. My legs are engaged, my shoulders are above my wrists. But to get to Chaturanga, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower halfway down, bending at the elbows. So my elbows are basically halfway on my rib cage. Still pushing through the heels, supporting my weight. That's Chaturanga, right? So you're halfway down, elbows are bent, elbows are over the wrists. And you'll notice that the elbow is like literally like at the halfway point of your rib cage. Boom, like that. So you could even, if you want to get the feeling for it before you try it, try this. Just lie on your back, put your elbows down, tuck them into your sides, and then point your palms to the ceiling. So this right here is what Chaturanga should look like, except we're going to flip it around. And again, bring it down this way. So from a plank or modified plank, this is just as tough. So let me show you this. So come to that modified plank we were looking at. Same thing, bend the elbows, come halfway down, and then you can push yourself back up with the yoga push-up. If you want to lower all the way to the ground, you lower, the elbows pass by the ribs, and you're down on the mat. And so the way that Sun Salutation is going to flow is we're going to move through these different poses, trying to keep the transitions between the poses pretty smooth, if we can, and trying to keep each pose feeling clean. Like you've got all the little pieces together within each pose. So let's go ahead and do that. If you need to go back and look at these, the titles are up here, so you can check for those. You can run through those alignment cues a little bit more. As we move through it, I'll offer a few more, because a lot of what this is about how it's feeling inside you. So you kind of have to do it to really let all the little bits of alignment sink in the right way, because you'll feel it. Like if your hands are in the wrong place, you'll feel it, If you get them in the right place, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, it feels a lot stronger, feels a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo one Sun Salutation using each variant. So you can just check it out. If you want to do it along with me, you can go ahead and do that. Once we have that done, we're going to take all those pieces that we put together and we're going to turn it into a flow. Before we do the flow, I'm going to actually show you a couple more seated forward folds that we'll use at the very end of that flow. So just so you have those as part of your toolbox as well. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to start standing up. So traditionally, a Sun Salutation begins in Tadasana, like we looked at before. So we're going to find Tadasana. Then we're going to inhale the arms overhead. And then we're going to come to that forward fold. Let the head hang heavy. We're going to inhale to a halfway lift. And then we're going to plant the hands and step back to plank. So you're going to step back. I'll do it with the modified plank version first. So knees are down. I've got a nice straight line from my knees to the crown of the head. Then I'm going to lower all the way to the mat. We're setting up for our low cobra. My hands should be at the right place at the low ribs. I activate the legs, press the tops of the feet into the mat, press the belly down into the mat, and then inhale, lifting the head, neck, and chest, rolling those shoulders back, pulling the elbows toward one another, pulling the heart forward. Exhale brings my forehead down to the mat, and then I'm going to push up through that modified plank, like so. Then I'm going to tuck the toes, lift the hips up and back. We're finding our downward facing dog. And that is one version of Sun Salutation. And usually as we do Sun Salutations, traditionally there's going to be 5 breaths, 5 rounds of breath once you get back to down dog. And traditionally we're going to take 1 breath per movement. I'm doing a little bit more now just so I can explain it as we go. So let's do that same version again, except this time instead of using that modified plank, let's try it with a full plank. And you can definitely stick with the modified if you like that. If full plank, if you've got something going on with your knees, your hips, and it doesn't feel good, go ahead and stick with that modified plank version. So to come back to the front of the mat, we'll do this. So same thing, but with full plank. So we start into Tadasana. And I'm going to show you the breathing pattern as we do it as well. So we're going to inhale, lift the arms up. Exhale to the forward fold. Let the head hang heavy. Inhale brings us to that halfway lift. Then we're going to plant the hands. We're going to step the left foot back, followed by the right foot, finding our plank. Right, shoulders above the wrists, legs are engaged. On the exhale, we're lowering all the way down to the mat. See if you can bend nice and slowly into the elbows. Come down. Elbows are still at the low ribs. We're going to press the tops of the feet into the mat, set up for low cobra. Inhale the head, neck, and chest up off the mat. Exhale the forehead back down. Now we're going to push back up through that full plank. So what we want to do is we want to walk the feet in. So we're on the balls of the feet, knees are up. And then as I exhale, I really want to make the stomach, the belly, the first thing that moves. So see if you can come up nice and straight. Inhale, exhale straight up. And then the hips come up and back. We find our way to our downward facing dog. So here we are in this nice long down dog again. Trying to get long from the wrist crease to the sit bones and the sit bones to the heels. And then we're going to take a look at the version of our Sun Salutation with upward facing dog. So here's a way to transition from down dog to the beginning of a sun. You can take a look forward, and then you can just step your feet to your hands from down dog. And then we inhale back to our halfway lift. Exhale down to our forward fold. Inhale, we hinge to rise. So that's really the full cycle, which we'll get into after we do these breakouts of the different flavors. So this next version is going to be a Sun Salutation using modified plank and upward facing dog, okay? So we'll inhale the arms up. Exhale, that nice swan dive to your forward fold. Inhale brings you to that halfway lift, that nice flat back. You plant your hands, you step back, drop your knees for modified plank. Untuck the toes, and then we're going to lower halfway down. And then we're going to press the tops of our feet into the mat and straighten into the arms. So this is our upward facing dog. Again, I want to emphasize it's just the palms and the tops of the feet on the mat. I've got my shoulders stacked above the wrists. I'm pulling the chest forward. And then I pull the shoulders forward and then lift the hips up and back, finding our way back to down dog. And let's try that one more time. This time we're going to use a full plank instead of the modified plank version. So hopefully this isn't too confusing, but there's just different flavors, and depending on where you're at on a particular day, you can choose what you need or what you want. So let's inhale the hips up and back. Let's look forward, step the feet to the hands. Inhale brings you to that halfway lift. Exhale, fold over, and then root down through your feet as you lift the torso. Hands come to heart center. So we'll do it again, going from full plank down to Chaturanga into upward facing dog, and then back to downward facing dog. So here we go. You can follow along. Inhale the arms up. Exhale, hinge and fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, you can make your way back to full plank. So we're finding that plank. If you need to adjust your feet, adjust your feet. And on the exhale, we're going to lower halfway down and catch ourselves in that Chaturanga. And then the toes slide back, and we inhale into our back bend. So upward facing dog. And then exhale back to downward facing dog, where we'll take 5 rounds of breath. So I get it. There's a lot going on there. But it's a lot easier than it looks. It's a lot easier than it is to explain. Once you've done it a lot, like anything, it starts to become very natural, and that's when you can start to do really the refinements. And the refinements are, like I said earlier, trying to keep the transitions from one pose to another nice and smooth. Trying to keep the breath flowing throughout the whole thing. And then trying to give each pose that you're in its due, so that, you know, when you land in Chaturanga, are you really in Chaturanga, or are you just kind of coming down and pushing yourself back up? Right? So one of the reasons this is such a good move, and why it's in so many flows, and why I have it in almost every flow that I've got on the channel, is that not only does it do a lot of good for the body, right? So you're working all the big muscle groups as you're going through this. And you're working the breath, because you're ideally, right, doing one move per breath, which I'll demo in a minute, and you can see that. We'll do it together. But because it's got so much going on, that there's always something that you can focus your mind on, right? There's always something that keeps you locked in the present moment, which is what you want out of your practice, right? You don't want to be thinking about all the stuff you have to do at work later. You want to set everything aside so that you can just focus on your alignment and your breath. And that's one of the big benefits that our practice gives us. Okay, so what I want to do now is okay, so what I'm going to show you is one version of down dog. I'm going to use the Chaturanga full plank version, because that's the one I usually do in my practice that I like. It's the one that I think will be a clean way to demonstrate all this. I'm going to show it all with the breath pattern, one move per breath. So just, you know, real talk, if you need more than one breath, take it, right? This isn't an exercise in like mortification where we need to struggle and suffocate ourselves. It's not that. But once you get into the flow, it's really pretty easy to do. So it's just another way to keep things focused. So let's try that. Let's start at the top of the mat. I'm not going to name the moves because we've just gone through it a bunch of times. But what I am going to do is I'm going to narrate the breathing pattern as we go, so you can see what it sounds like and what it feels like. And again, we want full breaths. We want to breathe slowly and smoothly. Nice, strong and slender breath as we go. Okay, so we start in Tadasana. Inhale, arms overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Plant the hands, step back. Exhale, lower halfway down. Inhale, upward facing dog. Exhale, hips are up and back to find down dog, where we'll take 5 rounds of breath. And so you can see how the breath works there. It's just one move, one breath. And if you're doing the knee down version of plank, same thing. If you're doing the low cobra version of the vinyasa, same thing. The inhale is that back bend regardless of whether you're doing low cobra or upward facing dog. And again, it's really always your choice, what you want. Sometimes if you need, you really want the shoulder stuff, just make it up dog. Sometimes if you really want to more focus on the back stuff, just leave it as low cobra. It's really up to you. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a couple of seated forward folds, and then we're going to put all that stuff together into a short flow that touches on the Sun Salutation, as well as kind of gets us back into the stuff we did in episode 1. So hopefully that feels familiar enough at this point that you'll be able to just kind of go along with it. And I'll tell you one thing about just memorizing what all these poses are called and how they feel. There's a lot, and you're not going to get it all at one time. It's just not going to happen. I mean, maybe it will happen. Some people have, incredible memory. But I think for a lot of us, it's just a matter of repetition, right? So just dive through some of the videos on the channel, or if you go to a studio class, just listen to what the instructor is saying, look around. There's going to be poses maybe you don't know or not familiar with, but you can at least kind of know what they're doing just by looking, right? And you'll have enough of a repertoire on your own that you won't be completely lost. Okay, so seated forward folds. I just want to do a couple of these because you're going to find these in a lot of flows as well. So let's sit with our legs out in front of us like this. This is staff pose Tadasana. And what we want to do is sit up high, extend through the spine, and then hinge forward. And you're pulling up and out, right? You're thinking up and out. You're not thinking like get my head down to my knees. You're thinking up and out. And you can, either reach out, grab your toes, or this is where I really recommend using a strap because a lot of us are pretty tight. And so you can bring the strap around the balls of the feet, and then we sit up, and then we pull forward, pulling up and out. And once you have that extension, right, as far as you can go, then if you want to let the spine start to round a bit, you can do that. These become cooling poses where you can start to let everything go towards the end of a flow. So we've got that. The next one I want to show you, which is another forward fold from the ground that I like, is when you bring the soles of your feet together and then you hold your feet like you're reading a book, right? Like that. Getting high up on the sit bones and letting the knees fall out to the side. So this is called Baddha Konasana, butterfly pose. A lot of people probably know this as. And then what you want to do is get nice and tall through the spine and then fold forward. Again, you're pulling up and out at first and then letting the spine round. And in butterfly, when you're here, if you're stretching the inner thighs, these adductor muscles. So you'll see this in my videos a lot because this is a muscle group that doesn't get hit all the time, but it's doing a lot of work. So we do want to focus on it. But if you want to intensify this a little, you can take your elbows or your forearms and just lightly press down on the inside of the shins here. Gets a little extra juice out of this stretch. And again, you can just let the head round here. There's even, if you want, I'll show you, if you want to grab your blocks, you can make a little tower of blocks and just rest your forehead on the blocks. It's a nice way, again, of grounding. And then the last one I want to show you right now is a wide-legged forward fold, which, for me is kind of like the bane of my existence. I don't have that much flexibility in this direction in my hips, and my hamstrings and low back get super tight in this particular alignment. But I know a lot of people, this is going to feel great for them, and I hope you are one of those people. But same thing, just get up nice and high. And for me, this is almost enough, honestly. I have this nice stretch that's going on there. I can get up nice and high. If you want to fold forward, you can do that. If you've got that range in your hips, you can do that. I mean, this is not my favorite pose, but it is a pose that people like. So I'm going to show you guys what this looks like. And same thing, if you want to make this into more of a grounding experience, you can make a little stack of blocks. Just rest the forehead on that stack of blocks, like so. Keeping the feet pointed up toward the ceiling, keeping the legs engaged. And that's your wide-legged forward fold. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of a flow here. We'll try and keep it relatively short. So what I'm going to do is bring us through some of those basic poses we looked at in episode 1, and then we're just going to flow through a sun salutation. We're going to do it twice, okay? So just to give you that feeling of what it's like to flow through it, the first version of that sun we'll do with low cobra, lowering all the way to the mat. The second version we'll do using upward facing dog. So using those flavors. You can use the modified version with your knees down. You can keep your hips up, or your knees up rather, for the full plank version. Totally up to you. So let's do this. Let's start in a child's pose. So sides of the big toes are together, knees are separated a little bit. I'm going to bring my hands down by my feet and just let my forehead come down to the mat. So we're just really embracing this little curled up shape. Everything is in tight. And remember, if this doesn't work for your knees, feel free to just keep the hips high. And you can take this more as a puppy pose variation. Otherwise, we're going to be in our child's pose, and we're just going to come to the breath. So take a nice inhale. Nice exhale. Do that a couple more times on your own. And as you inhale, you should be able to feel the ribs on the back of the body expanding as you breathe in, contracting as you breathe out. And then from here, let's make our way to our tabletop. So just lifting the torso, getting our hands underneath our shoulders, spreading the fingers nice and wide. We've got the hips stacked above the knees. We're pointing the big toes backward. And let's come through some cows and some cats. So on your inhale, drop the belly, lift the gaze, lift the heart. And on your exhale, start to round through your spine. You can start to flow at your own pace here, using that nice long inhale to come through cow. Exhaling as you move through your cat. And you can hang out anywhere that feels particularly good. Now listen, if you want to add some extra movement, you can. If you want to look out over one shoulder, kind of gazing out to the left, gazing out to the right, maybe dropping the hips toward the heels and stretching into the arms, you can do that. And then we'll come back to our tabletop. And from here, let's just tuck the toes and lift the hips up and back, finding our down dog. So again, we're getting nice and long from the wrist crease to the sit bones, emphasizing the idea of getting the spine as long as you can get it, right? This is really, in so many ways, about the spine. Looking for that length, looking for that sense of spaciousness, building up the strength of your back muscles, your shoulder muscles, and then also getting long from the sit bone down to the heels, so the arms and legs feel like they're doing the same amount of work. So from here, we're going to look forward, and we're just going to walk our feet up to our hands. Inhale, come into that halfway lift. So again, we're looking for a 90-degree angle here, roughly the torso roughly parallel with the floor, bringing more weight to the front of our feet rather than sitting back in our heels. Spine is nice and straight. We're feeling those muscles. We're feeling our hamstrings working here to support the torso. And then exhale, fold all the way over. Just let the head hang heavy here. If you want to shake your head yes and no a couple times, that's another way to kind of traction out the cervical spine, the neck a bit. And then from here, we're going to hinge at the hips, see if we can come up with a nice flat back. Reach the arms up overhead. Exhale, hands come to heart center. So we're going to flow through our first Sun Salutation using low Cobra for our back bend. So inhale the arms up. Exhale, hinge to fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Keep that lift. Plant the hands. We're going to step the feet back. Let's come to modified plank on this first one. So we're nice and long from the knees to the crown of the head. And then we're exhale, bend the elbows, let them press across the rib cage on the way down. And we lower all the way down to our low Cobra. Usually it's a good idea to scoot your hands back just a little so that the bottom of the hand is lined up with that low rib. Engage the tops of the feet. Inhale, come through your back bend, your low Cobra. Pin those elbows together, roll those shoulders back. Exhale, forehead comes down to the mat. We're going to push up through that modified plank. So on your exhale, push the mat away. Come up nice and straight from the knees to the crown of the head. And then we're tucking the toes, lifting the hips up and back. And we're in our down dog again. So we're going to take roughly 5 rounds of breath. See if you can come back to the breath. And while you're here, just check out what your feet are doing. You shouldn't be able to see your heels. They should be right in back of the front of your feet. Are you pressing all 10 fingers into the mat? Are your fingers spread nice and wide? Can you spin your biceps toward the front of the room, front of the mat? Do you feel like your arms and legs are doing the same amount of work? Is your spine nice and long? From here, we're going to look up. Once again, we're going to step our feet to our hands. Inhale, back into that halfway lift. This is still part of that same Sun Salutation. Exhale, forward fold. And then root down through your feet as you lift the torso. Reach overhead, and then hands come to heart center. So that was one complete Sun Salutation. We're going to do it again. This time I'm going to offer the version with the full plank instead of the modified plank, and upward facing dog instead of that low Cobra. So you can stick with the first one if you like, otherwise you can follow along. So we're going to inhale the arms up, exhale, forward fold. Inhale brings us to that halfway lift. We're going to keep the lift, plant the hands, we're going to step back, finding our plank. So again, in plank, from our heels to the crown of the head, we're long. We're not letting the hips sink or pike. On the exhale, we're going to lower halfway down, catching ourselves in this Chaturanga. From Chaturanga, it's the toes that slide back, and we push the mat away. So we're on the palms, the tops of the feet, upward facing dog. And then the shoulders come forward, and you come up and over your toes. You can go 1 foot at a time or both at the same time. And we're coming back to our downward facing dog for another 5 rounds of breath. And you'll notice as you start flowing, these down dogs are going to start to feel a little more comfortable, a little more like a rest stop along the way, a place where you can rejuvenate a little bit. Keep dialing in that sense of alignment, that sense of nice straight arms, nice straight legs. And then from here, let's come back to child's pose. So drop the knees, untuck the toes. We'll sink the hips down and back. Bring the forehead to the mat, the hands down by the feet. Let the shoulders round forward. And then from here, let's sit back on our heels. Let's come down onto our seats. Let's stretch the legs out in front of us. We'll set up for one seated forward fold. So I'm going to give you the choice, whichever you like here. You can either keep the legs out straight in front of you. You can bring the soles of the feet together. Or you can spread the legs wide for a wide-legged forward fold. So it's really up to you what's going to feel best for you right now. They're all kind of doing the same thing with slightly different emphasis on which muscles and the legs are getting worked. But regardless of which one you're doing, just let the spine round a bit. We want to start to cool things down a little bit here. Start to let things relax a bit here. And then when you're ready to come out, we're going to lift the torso. If you're in the Baddha Konasana, you can bring the knees up. If you had the wide-legged version, you can go ahead and bring the knees, the ankles back towards one another. We're going to bend the legs and just come down onto our backs. Like so. And you can start with the knees bent like this. Go ahead, pull both knees into the chest. Give yourself a squeeze. And then let's do this. Let's straighten our legs out. Let's find that reclined mountain pose. So just like our standing mountain pose, the big toes are, the sides of them are touching. We're pulling the pinky toe side edges of the foot back. And we're getting long from the heels up through the crown of the head. Let's take a full body stretch just to wrap things up here. So lift your arms up to the ceiling, palms face one another, and then just reach them up and overhead. Try not to come into a back bend here. Just full body stretch from the heels to the fingertips. Pull all the muscles to the bone everywhere for a second. Nice. And then you can bring the hands back up, let them float down by your side, and we'll set up for our Shavasana. So you can let the feet just sort of drop out to the sides. The arms can be somewhere either near the hips or a little further out. Palms are facing up so that the chest is open. Let the tension go. Feel the effects of that practice. Notice which muscle groups feel like they've warmed up or woken up a little bit. Just allow yourself to rest here. Again, you can rest as long as you like here. If you just want to let the rest of the video play out and stay here in Shavasana, that could feel nice. Otherwise, when you're ready, you can just come up. And so hopefully that was a good way to break down sun salutations. That last flow, we did a couple of them with some variations in there. Building off of what we did in the first episode, some of those basic poses, adding this onto it. So more and more, hopefully you're starting to get a sense of the building blocks, the vocabulary that we're using for the different poses here in our yoga practice. And one of the things I love about sun salutations, it's like I said earlier, they do give you that sense of really just waking up the whole body, right? So you're using the big muscle groups, you're flowing with the breath. If you just got up in the morning and did a couple of those, you'd be in a good place to start the day, right? So you can go back, check out the alignment bit in the beginning. Again, everything is labeled so you can find it. You can practice this little flow again. And then on your own, like if this is something that seems cool to you, like just practice doing some sun salutations. Do a couple every day and you'll start to see how they feel smoother, how it starts to feel a little more intuitive for you. And then that can really become a nice central part of the flows that we're going to be doing. So we'll start looking at more poses in the next episode. I hope this worked for you. If you have any questions, of course, please just put it in the comments. If you liked it, hit like. If you want to subscribe, because I do put up a couple flows every week, go ahead, hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell so you'll get notified for all that stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this flow. I hope you're enjoying this series. I appreciate you checking it out. I appreciate you spending time on the mat with me. Hope to see you again.